Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Table for Us podcast. Go ahead and pull up your seat because today we are talking about renting versus home ownership. And this is a topic that, excuse me, I have been wanting to have for quite some time, especially dealing with us, people of color. Because growing up, a lot of people of color in my neighborhood did not own homes. We rented. And there's nothing wrong with renting. So I'm going to actually go into the pros and cons on both sides from my perspective because I have been a renter and I am a homeowner. Okay. But before we jump into our episode, as always, I want to give all glory and honor to God. Honestly, having a home was something that I prayed about, something that I always wanted because I didn't grow up in one. And I had a few friends who actually their grandparents owned a home. But as far as parents, a lot of the parents didn't own, they all rented. So I wanted to have a different lifestyle for my children. So I had this dream home that I always wanted, this 4-bedroom house, I believe it was, with the white picket fence and all of that. So I want to give all the praise and glory to God because without him, I would not have my home. I prayed about it. I kept my faith even through the process, and I'll go through all of that later in the episode, but he blessed me with my home. So I want to give him all the praise and glory and the honor for that. Also, if you are someone who is interested in starting your own podcast and you're not sure how to get started, where to start, or anything like that, I'm going to be leaving some links below on how you can get started with your own podcast. My podcast is hosted on Podbean. I use it to post my audio as well as my video episodes. Excuse me. They are posted on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. They also publish to a bunch of other podcast streaming devices and platforms as well. So make sure you click the link below and get your podcast started. All right, so let's jump into this episode. First thing first is I want to ask you, have you ever looked at your rent check and thought, am I just paying someone else's mortgage? Typically when you're renting, not an apartment, but renting someone else's house, you're paying somebody else's mortgage, potentially. Their house might be paid off, you don't know. But if it's not paid off, you're paying their mortgage and you're putting extra money in their pocket, okay? Or maybe you've read a home buying blog and thought, that sounds great, but is it for me? Home purchasing, home owning is not for everybody. So that's why I said I'm going to talk about the pros and the cons on both sides, okay? So today I'm going to be sharing my personal journey from being a renter to a homeowner. And I'm going to be talking about both sides of the pros and cons, as I already stated, and how you can know what's right for you. Okay. So this episode is not to persuade anybody on renting or persuade anybody on home buying. It's to basically give you my perspective on both sides so you can make a conscious decision on which side is better for you. Okay. Some people like to be homeowners. Some people like to be renters. We're going to talk about both sides. Okay. Because technically, there is no one size fits all when it comes to renting, owning, or anything of the sort. What you rent, what you own, what area you're in, it's going to always vary. Okay. Okay. So I got my very first apartment that I actually rented in my name on my own when I was 19 years old. No, I'm lying. Was I 19? No, I was 20 years old. Excuse me, guys. So I was 20 years old when I got my first apartment, and it was a 2-bedroom apartment in Oakland. Now, this might make a few people upset, but times have changed. Things are not the same. When I got my first apartment, I want to say my rent was $550, maybe $500 for my 2-bedroom apartment. I stayed in Oakland. For anybody who is watching and you're not from California, or actually, honestly, San Francisco, Oakland, Richmond, they are known cities. So I lived in Oakland in the Bay Area. That was my first apartment. Now, I'm from San Francisco, born and raised. But at the time, even then, San Francisco was very expensive for me to live in. Okay. And then I just wanted something different, honestly, because I felt like nobody really knew me in Oakland. Like I have family from Oakland that lived in Oakland, but as far as other people, nobody knew me in Oakland. So I wanted to live somewhere that was away from everybody that I knew, right? Excuse me. Let me fix my spectacles, y'all. they're a little dirty. So anyway, let me take those off because it's blurring my vision right now. All right, so got my very first apartment. Now, here's the thing, right? When you go out and you're trying to get your apartment, my thing that I ran into was because I didn't have any prior rental history. I had a lot of people basically giving me no's, okay? Also, at the time when I got my first apartment, my credit was horrible because if you've listened to anything else that I have talked about or you follow me on social media, how I got into becoming a credit specialist was because nobody told me about the importance of credit. So what happened is I messed up my credit, not realizing how it was going to affect me later on. Okay. So not only did it affect me with getting the type of car that I wanted when I was ready to actually get my apartment, I couldn't get the nice apartment in a nice area and the Berkeleys and all that stuff like that. I had to look for something cheaper and in a different neighborhood than where I wanted to be at, which wasn't a big deal because I like to say the area that I was at was pretty decent at the time. So anyway, I literally begged. When I say begged, I asked and I begged and I kept following up with this particular landlord because I was getting so many no's. And his concern also was that I didn't have any rental history. But I was good as far as my job. So my job history was good. I had been on my job for quite some time. And even my job before that, I was on it for quite some time as well. I made decent money at the time. And I was a mom, a new mom also. So he took a chance with me. And I made sure that I paid my rent on time. I didn't cause any problems or anything of the sort. And of course, so in Oakland at the time, they had rent control. So your rent couldn't be increased a significant amount every year or something like that. So we lived there, I want to say for maybe about 4 years before I moved because I had my daughter and I wanted a bigger place. By the time I moved out, my rent was probably $650, I want to say. So between 4 years, I went from I was either paying $500 or $550. I can't remember. Don't quote me on that. But I went from about $100 to $150 increase in 4 years. Not bad, right? Because nowadays they be trying to raise your rent $100 every year. So anywho, now, and what I liked about my first apartment was one, it was conveniently located as far as public transportation, not too far from the Fruitvale BART station. There was a bus line that ran outside. So I had a car, but in the event that something happened to my car, which I had a couple of issues with my car, it got broken into. They were breaking into cars back then. Now, keep in mind, I said I was 20 years old. I'm 48, about to be 48 now. So we're talking 28 years ago. They was breaking into cars still. It's worse now, but then they were still breaking into cars. Somebody broke into my cars and stole my CD, what do you call it? CD holder. Now, CD, for y'all who a little young and don't know what that is a compact disc. That is how we listened to our music at that time. And I had a visor holder with all of my CDs, and not all of them, the ones that I listened to the most. So I believe it held up to 10 or 12 CDs. And then I had sorry guys, I feel like I got something. What did I have? I had a pull out, what do you call it? A pull out. Was it a pull out or was it a face when that happened? No, I had the face off. So also with our radios, you either had the pull out where you pulled the whole thing out, right? So nobody would break in your car and steal it. And then as they started getting, excuse me, y'all, when they started getting a little bit advanced, then it was just the face off. So you press this little button and the face would come off, right? So that was pretty cool. I actually really liked that. So I believe I had the face off. So anyway, so you would just pop it on and then you could stick your CD or whatever in there. So I had that. And I want to say I took that in the house. I started getting a little comfortable and it had a little case and you would just put the face off into the case. So anyway, back to renting. Where was I going with this story? I went left with the whole car breaking in thing. So anyway, I like that we had a gate. So in order to get into where all of our doors were, there was a security gate. So you had to have the code in order to get in. So I like that aspect of it. I didn't really have a lot of issues as far as things breaking down or anything of that sort that I can remember from that place. Okay. But one of the pros was if something was not functioning correctly, I could always just call the landlord and say, hey, I'm trying to think. No, my first apartment was actually pretty good, aside from the fact that it was just a 2-bedroom and I wanted a larger size. So now, fast forward, I've lived in a couple of places, and the biggest pro in all of that was if something broke, I could call and say, hey, this is not working. Can you send maintenance or whatever the case may be? So I've renting apartments and I've also rented houses. Now, I'm going to talk about the cons though in my process of that. So when you're renting an apartment, you're pretty cool, right? Unless you got a slumlord who just doesn't care and the place is just falling apart. So I had another place that was in Oakland, which was a 3-bedroom. Now this place was on High Street. My first place was on 23rd Avenue, as they like to call it, the murder dubs. I didn't have too much violence other than my car being broken into. But on High Street, that 3-bedroom was in a fourplex. So a fourplex is when you have 4 different units in one building. Okay. My first apartment, I believe there was 5 units. Was it 6 units? It was either 5 or 6 units. So that's a multi-unit. Okay. And then you have your duplex where it's just 2 apartments in one building. So I lived in a fourplex and we had a shared washer and dryer, basically. Now, in my first apartment, we didn't have a laundry room. We didn't have in washer units. So I had to go to an actual laundromat and wash my clothes there. With this one, we actually had a secured, and you had to use quarters basically still to use it. And it was only, I want to say for the fourplex, there was 2 washers and 2 dryers. So between the 4 of us, the 4 units or whatever, and however many people you had in it. That I didn't really like because some people didn't get their stuff out of the wash machines, or they left their stuff in the dryer. So you had to wait, because I was the type of person, I didn't like taking people's stuff out and sitting it on top. I just hated that. And when people did that to me, it drove me crazy. So that's a con when you're living in an apartment or you're renting an apartment, when you have that shared laundry space. Okay, was a big con, at least for me. The other one is depending on where you're located, right? You might have your parking space that's specific for your car. So if anyone comes over and visit, them trying to find parking, again, depending on where you're located, they can't park on the complexes. They'll get towed because everybody has assigned parking spaces. And if they park on the streets, again, depending on where you live. Now, when I lived on High Street and where I lived, I want to say, was there more parking? No. When I lived on 23rd Street, my first complex, we actually had a parking garage for our car. So that was gated as well. But the street parking, there was very limited street parking. So if people came over, it's like them having to park a few blocks away and then walk down to our apartment complex and so forth. So that was a con, more so when you have guests come over. Okay. The other thing is having to wait. So if you call, like, yes, you can call and say this isn't working, whatever the case may be. But if you have one of those landlords or lazy maintenance people, then guess what? You got to wait. So whatever it is that's broken, that's not working, that's leaking, or whatever the case may be, you have to wait on them. You have to keep calling them and following up. So that happened to me in a couple of places that I lived in. And it was such a headache because it's, yo, when are you guys coming to fix this? Like, when are you going to send somebody to come and take care of this? And I would always get, oh, the work order was put in, somebody's coming, don't worry, da da da. And I'm still waiting. And I'm like, one time I didn't have hot water. We gotta take showers. We can't take showers in cold water, but my mama raised me to be very resourceful. We had to boil water and do the bird bath and wash up like that until they were able to come and basically fix the water heater or whatever was going on. Okay. Normally, when you're living in apartments, the other con that I had, because normally I was on the top unit. So when I lived in a fourplex, I was the top. So you had a bunch of stairs you had to walk up to get to the top. When I lived in another housing, it was a housing community, my first time living in subsidy housing, and I'll talk about that too. Did I have anybody on top of me? No. I was actually on the top. So there was one time where I lived in another apartment. No, I was on the top then. No, that was a 3-story. So there was one time where I lived in Concord and there was one unit downstairs, I was in the middle, and then we had somebody on the top. Now, if you're somebody who likes quiet, which is me, now don't judge me. I know you're probably like, how can you actually like quiet and you have all those children? Because I do. I feel like after a certain time, I want my house to be quiet. I want the outside to be quiet. And my upstairs neighbors, I don't know what they was doing. I felt like they were river dancing upstairs, like just all the time. And I'm just like, "Ugh. Sit down somewhere. It's like 10 o'clock at night. I don't understand what like y'all upstairs having relay races in your apartment." So that is a con when you're renting an apartment. Okay. Now, let me jump into when I was renting houses. So I had a townhouse and I had 2 other like single resident houses that I rented. The first house that I rented was in Antioch. Now that's more east, East Bay or whatever as we like to call it. And my children actually love this house. I didn't particularly. I did initially, but then it was like we started having problems with field mice. So where the house was at, now when you go inland, okay, East Bay, the majority of all of that used to be farmland. Okay, so there's a lot of fields, whether it be farmland or whatever the case may be. So where the house was, it was in a, what do you call it, like a cul-de-sac, where it's not a through street, it just circles out, which I loved. And then there was a park at the end of the cul-de-sac. So I felt safe with my children actually going to the park. So I really liked that. But it was a single story house. It was a one, I believe it was a 4-bedroom. Yes, it was a 4-bedroom. So it was originally a 3-bedroom and then they added a 4th bedroom. So the 4th bedroom, which I didn't notice when I first got it, it had no closet in it. So we had to basically get a cabinet for my son so that he can be able to put his clothes in it. It was on the other side of the house, which he loved because he didn't have to be over there with his siblings. So that was cool. My biggest issue there, it was an older house and it was the field mice and the stove, I think around Thanksgiving or something like that, or Family Day, like I like to call it. I didn't realize how small it was. So when I went to go put my turkey in the oven, it was one of those double ovens. So it was tiny and I had this big turkey and I couldn't get in it. So yeah. But because it was an old house, I literally had one of those landlords who just pay your rent and don't call me basically. So I ended up we moved from that house. We didn't stay in that house long. I want to say I ended up breaking my lease. We was there for less than a year because they were no help when it came to the mice. They were like, "Oh, just put down some traps and some decon." So I did that and mice just starts turning up dead everywhere. And I was just like, "Okay, I can't live in these conditions with my children. Like this is just not going to work for me." Okay. That was just a horrible experience because of just the mice. But when we rented our townhome, it was actually owned by I guess a big property management company. And that was actually cool. My children liked it. They liked the location of it. I didn't because of the violence that started to happen. So we had to basically move from there. But what I'm getting at is it just depends on where you're at and what it is you're renting. So my final place of renting was my house that I was renting before I moved here to my home that I own. And when we went through the process of renting that home, one of the things that they were looking for is someone who was going to stay long term. And I'm like, that works for me. It was in a lovely neighborhood out in Brentwood. It was quiet and it was a newer house, so I love that. And I want to say that was a 3-bedroom with a loft. So we turned the loft into a 4th bedroom for my son. It had a front living room, it had the back living room, or the main family room. It had a nice little dining area. It had a backyard that my children actually go and play in, because the other two places that we lived in, there was no backyard for them to go live, play in. So I really liked the fact that it had a backyard. We had a laundry room in the house, which I really loved, because I was like, oh, thank you. I don't have to go out somewhere else and to wash our clothes. It had 2.5 bathrooms. So there was basically a powder room downstairs. Then there was the main bathroom with did it have 2 sinks or 1 sink? I think it had 1 sink and then a lone counter. And then it had a separate door to where the commode was and the shower and tub. And then in the master bedroom, I had my own bathroom with, oh, I missed that tub. It was a deep tub with jets. And then it had basically the combined with the shower and a pretty decent, I actually like that closet. So we were comfortable living our life like it was loco, right? La Vida Loco, whatever you want to call it. And I want to say when we first moved in, the rent was $2,300, I want to say. I believe it was $2,300. So when we were in this townhome, the rent was $1,750, and that was in San Francisco. And I believe I had a below market rate unit or either a tax credit unit, something like that. But my rent was $1,750. So when we moved to Brentwood and we got that house, I want to say the rent was like $2,400. Now, I didn't mind that. I was making more money and it was in a better neighborhood, so I didn't mind it at the time. By the time we moved out, my rent was almost $2,800 for that house. Now, let me tell you why I moved out. I moved out because the owners decided they wanted to sell. So the biggest con I will say with renting a house is that you cannot get comfortable. Okay. Not only can you not do what you want to do, if you want to paint the walls, you want to do something else. And then the house that we were renting, they had HOA. So that was another thing. I couldn't get a gazebo because it would be too high over the wall. Now, HOA, whether you're renting or owning, you got to follow their rules. But I was limited to far as doing what I wanted to do. If I wanted to paint the cabinets. Now there's all these TikTok hacks and Instagram hacks where you can do renter friendly stick and peel and you're fine, right? But I felt like I was constantly being watched by the property management. So if something did need to be fixed or something, it was like, oh, we drove by and they were so close that they would drive by and they would say, oh, okay, we've seen this and we've seen that and what's going on here, yada, yada. So I felt like, I don't know, like I was just staying in my parents' house and I was constantly being watched all the time. So I didn't like that aspect of it. I didn't like the fact that now you want to sell your home. So now I have to find another place for me and my children to live. So that was pretty much the biggest cons I felt was that. And then having to wait on somebody else to come and fix something. So it's okay, I've called you and where you at? Why you haven't came and fixed what I need to be fixed? The lack of parking or whatever the case may be, when you're living in an apartment complex, having to share a wash house, if that's what you have, because a lot of the older apartments didn't come with washer and dryers in them. Some of the newer apartments in different areas now have washer and dryers, usually a stackable one or one that's behind like a closet, which I think is really cool. But sometimes you're going to get those crazy neighbors when you're living in an apartment complex. So that would be another con. If you're blessed to have really nice neighbors and nobody upstairs river dancing on top of your head, then renting is cool, depending on where you're at, the location, the unit, where your unit is at. If you can there are these new rentals where they're called like casitas. They're like little mini tiny homes. I think those are really cool. When all my children move out and it's just me, I might rent my house out and give me a little small casita because it's more easily to maintain. And even though you're renting, it's like you're still in a apartment community, but you're in a little tiny home. So definitely something to look out for. So now let's talk about homeownership. All right. So with homeownership is not for everybody. Like I said, when I was growing up, nobody really owned, right? And as far as people of color, what I saw was when I started going to high school and meeting other people, because I went to high school in the avenues, I started meeting other people who didn't live where I lived in the projects and so forth. And they parents owned homes, and some of them are Black people, but a lot of them were white or Asian. So I'm like, I want to own, but I didn't think it was possible, because I'm like, my mother didn't own a home. My grandmother didn't own a home. I'm not sure if my great grandmother owned one, but from those that I grew up around in my immediate family at the time, no one owned a home. So I didn't think it was possible. And when I would look and see how much homes would cost, ooh, I can't afford that. It was more so like the down payment plus the monthly mortgage payment and the taxes and so forth. So one thing that a lot of people don't talk about is you have your monthly mortgage payment, and that's basically your principal and the interest, right? But then you have your monthly mortgage payment. So that's your principal, interest plus property taxes. And if you have mortgage insurance premium, which is MIP, you have all that lumped together, and that's how much you pay every month. Your monthly payment is going to increase over time, but your principal payment with the interest is going to stay the same unless you got a flexible interest rate, which I do not recommend that. You always want to make sure you got a fixed interest rate. So that means that interest rate and your principal amount will not change. Now, the reason why I say your monthly amount will change is because of property taxes. Property taxes are going to increase. That's inevitable. If the value in land and everything is getting better and everything is going up, then your property tax is going to go up. So your monthly payment that you pay will increase over time. Okay, so having a home is cool for so many different reasons, and then it's not for other reasons. So let's start with the cons of home ownership. One of the cons of home ownership, I had to write it down because, is when things start falling apart. Okay. So if you don't have homeowners insurance, which typically you're supposed to, you don't have homeowners insurance or home warranty, when things fall apart and need to be fixed, that's going to have to come out of your pocket. Okay. So I encourage people to have an emergency fund for house stuff if you can before buying. And things I'm talking about is like your water heater going out, or your AC if you're in a place where you have air conditioning, your roof, depending on the year of your house. Like over time, those things have to be repaired, replaced. Your appliances may break or fail, or whatever the case may be. You can't call the landlord because you are the landlord. You own the home, right? So when those things break down, you are the person who has to get it fixed. And sometimes things fall apart at the same time. Like right now, currently for me, raw and uncut. Now my house is not even 5 years old. I got my house built from the ground up, and you would think, okay, I'm good, at least for about 10 years before I need to do anything. Wrong. I had something happen with my AC. Now I had warranty on it, so that was a good thing. When it happened, I called them like, hey, something's going on. It's not working. It's making some clicking noise. Yeah. So they came out, they fixed whatever was wrong with it. And then I signed up for this annual maintenance thing where they come out and they maintenance it to keep the longevity of the unit working. What happened after that? Then I had a leak. When you get a new build home, sometimes they build them too fast and stuff start falling apart. I decided not to upgrade, and usually they try to get you to upgrade on everything. If there's some stuff that you can wait for later, then I'd suggest that you do that. But what happened with me is I did some upgrades on some things. I did not think that I needed to do upgrades on my faucets and so forth. So they used the cheapest faucet material and didn't install it properly. And I had a slow leak that I did not know about until it started leaking from my master bathroom down to my living room. Now, my homeowner's insurance would be something that I would call and say, hey, can we get this fixed? My deductible for my homeowner's insurance is $1,000. When I called, because I actually knew somebody, and this is the power of networking, right? And then you got Thumbtack, I wouldn't suggest Craigslist, but there's other places that you can call. So He ended up giving me a pretty good deal on fixing the leak, doing the restoration, putting the heaters and stuff in to dry up all the water, make sure there was no more. Thank God I didn't have any mold forming. So that cut my cost. So anyway, it ended up being, I want to say like $1,100 basically, or a little less than $1,100. And it basically wasn't worth filing a claim on my homeowner's insurance because it would have potentially increased my premium over the year. I had to pay out of pocket. And he let me break it up into 2 payments because this was an unexpected expense. And I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? And he hooked me up as far as the price because you pay for those heaters, there's so many things that go into when you have water damage and so forth. So that was another out of the blue expense. The other thing is, fortunate where I live, we don't have homeowners insurance, a homeowners association. So there's no HOAs, homeowners association fees where I live, which I really love. So when you live in a community where there's HOAs, even though it's your house, you still have to get permission to do certain things to the outside of your house. I don't like that. I don't like that. The benefit of having HOA is that they come through and they take care of the outside groundskeep. So that can include landscape of the front of your yard. That can include the grounds on the property. If there's a community park, they take care of that. Now, when you don't have HOA, guess what? You're responsible for the landscape in front of your house. The property, just the community property, if there's a park, just doesn't get tended to. So we got a park right now. It's an eyesore. Because as soon as you come into our community, you see this park that done fell apart because the children done damaged it, and I can't stand it. I hate it. So those are my cons when it comes to owning your home. Okay. Another thing, currently right now, my garbage disposal is not working. So I got a few quotes from some people, from somebody I'm waiting for to get back. Cons, right? The pros basically of owning your home is equity. I would say that's probably the biggest pro of owning your home. Now, there's a lot of people out there that like to say, when you own a home, you're still a renter. Let me break down that misconception. So when you buy a home, if you don't have the cash to purchase that home, you have to go and get a loan. Now you're going to get that loan from either the government. If you get an FHA loan, you're going to get that, well, through the government. You're going to get that loan from a private bank if you have a credit union or something like that. Or if you have a VA loan, it's going to be a loan, right, to purchase that home. So they're going to say, we're going to loan you the money to purchase that home. Okay. And then they're going to say, this is what you have to pay back to us. It's going to say the loan was this amount. So that breaks out your principal. Okay. Then they're going to say, this is the interest that we're going to charge for you borrowing this money. Okay. And depending on what type of loan you get, if it's an FHA loan, which is what I started with, the first time homeowners loan, is they usually add in that MIP, which is that mortgage insurance premium. Okay. So that's like a insurance that kicks in if you can't pay your mortgage, whatever the case may be. Excuse me. And then of course you have your property tax and all that, right? That's something that's the land wherever it's at. Now, you build equity in your house over time. Okay. Wait, let me back up. I lost my train of thought. So you own your home. Your home is yours. But when you get that loan, what happens is they say your collateral that we're going to use is your house. So if you don't pay and you default on your mortgage, which is basically the loan, we're going to take your house because you didn't pay us back. All right. So you're not renting, you're paying a loan back. It's the same thing like when you go and you finance a car, right? So are you renting your car or is that your car? You financed it, so you got to pay the loan back on it. So if you look at it in that way, then it's, okay, I'm not renting, I own it, but my car is my collateral, my house is my collateral, and if I don't pay it back, then they're going to take the car because that's what you signed that, hey, if I don't pay you back, you get to take my house. Okay, so you're not renting. It's not the same thing as renting because when you rent, you're not building no equity. And I'm going to get into equity. So equity builds up in your house as So if you buy your house at a certain price, and this is the value for the house, whatever the value is, at the time I forgot what my house appraised for when I first bought it. But I bought my house for at the time for $353,000, I believe. And I want to say it appraised for maybe 370 to 380 or something like that at the time. Right now, my house is worth a little over 5K. Okay. So the difference between what I got my loan for and the value of the house is your equity in the middle. Okay. You can borrow against that if you want. Now, if you do it, don't be like me, because I did that. And this is raw and uncut and transparent. I did it and I pulled some equity out to get my backyard done. Right. And by doing that, that added more value to my house. But I honestly wish that I would have taken that equity and actually invested it into one of my businesses or in a new business, something that was going to make me some money. Right. So if you're going to pull equity out of your home, use it to invest. Right. Maybe to buy a second home as rental property. Don't be like me, because now I look at my backyard and my dogs have tore up my backyard. So I'm just like, that was a waste of money. But you can do that. You can borrow against your home equity, pull that out, or refinance and pull money out is what they call it, and use that to invest in something else or use it to whatever it is you want to use it for. Okay. So that is one of the biggest pros of owning a home, is that equity. Your house now becomes your own bank. The other pro of home ownership is being able to use it as a tax deduction. You can't do that when you're renting. Now, if you have a business and you use your home, wherever you're renting, as your home office, yes, you can use that as a deduction. But those property taxes I say you pay on, the interest that I say you pay on, those are tax deductibles when you own a home. So that's another thing. You get tax benefits when you own a home. Okay. The other pro of owning a home is you can do whatever you want to do. Now, y'all can't see it right now because I'm using a different background, but I'm actually in my home office and I have my walls painted. You can do this when you're renting too, but you got to paint it back when you move. This is my home, so if I want to paint my walls rainbow or I want to knock a wall down, I can do that because it's my home. Okay. The other thing is, oh, I didn't talk about this. One of the cons was, if you have people come and stay with you, as far as visiting, if they stay too long, you now got to add them as people who live with you. When you own your home, people come stay with you if they want to, and you don't have to report it to nobody because you own the home. You make all the decisions. The other thing that I remember when I was renting was I wanted to get, I think it was DirecTV, right? The satellite TV. And I had to get permission first for them to put the satellite because it's not my home. But when you own a home, I loved it. People were coming around and they're like, oh yeah, when I got my solar panels, they were like, so are you the homeowner? I said, yes, I am. I am the homeowner. Yes, that's, so I don't need to call nobody and get permission to put my solar panels in. Or if I wanted satellite TV, I don't have that because now we stream everything. But I'm the homeowner. I didn't have to go and get permission. So those are the things that I would say are the pros and cons of renting and owning. And for me personally, even with all the stuff where it's, oh, this is falling apart, I got to get that fixed. Oh my God, here come another expense. I will say that I enjoy being a homeowner. Oh, let me not forget this one. Another big pro to owning is I could pass this down to my children. You can't pass down something you don't own. If you're renting a home, you rent an apartment, you pass away. Now your children or whomever was living with you, they got to figure out what they're going to do and go stay somewhere else, especially if they're not on a lease. They can't stay there no more. Because now the unit is going to go to somebody else. But when you own a home, you can pass that down to your children. It can stay. It now becomes something that stays in your family. And that was my other thing when I was renting that home. I could have went and rented another home when they told me they wanted me to move, but I decided, hey, I have this little one, this little baby, and my other boys. And I was like, God forbid something happened to me. Where are my children going to live? Because we don't own this. This is not ours, right? So I decided to buy a home so that my children have a place to live. I have a life insurance and my house and everything in a trust so that My life insurance pays into the trust. The trust will take care of paying off the house and then also take care of paying the property taxes so that my children have a home to live in. And then at some point, they'll have to take over that because the money in the trust is only going to last for so long. So I hope this was informative to you. I do want to get into an episode where I talk about the home buying process, but I don't want to talk about that in this episode because this episode was strictly to talk about. Hi, so my name is Nicolette Royal or Nicole Johnson for legal purposes. Royal is my father's last name, but my mom gave me my dad's last name, but I use it now with my businesses, and I am the owner of Royal Legacy Services. Royal Legacy Services is a tax prep and tax advisory credit repair business. I started this business, I started doing taxes maybe about 20 years ago, and I treated it as a hobby. It was always a side gig for me. It wasn't until 2 years ago that I decided to go full in with my business when I got laid off. So I provide tax services for personal taxes. I provide tax services for small businesses. I provide tax advice. So with the tax advice, I typically try to give people tips and advice on what they need to do in the year before tax season. So different things and strategies that you can implement now will help you with tax savings, tax deductions, and credits and so forth when tax season comes around. I added credit repair about 3 years ago as a service to my tax business. And the reason being was because I had so many tax clients that I would hear when I would have a consultation with them, they would say, as soon as I get my money, I'm going to pay this off or I'm going to do this so that I can fix my credit. So I felt like it was an opportunity to add credit repair services so that I could help them with their taxes and their credit. One of the things that really helped me in my business is I was my first client. So I started doing my own taxes myself. And then that turned into me doing taxes for family members and then friends. And pretty much everybody that I have currently literally is a referral. I might have a few people that found me on like Yelp or Facebook or something like that. But majority of my clients that I have, they were referred to me by somebody else. The same with credit repair. I actually went to an actual credit repair company before I was about to buy my house. And they got a couple of things off, but they didn't educate me on the importance of how to build my credit back up. They didn't educate me on the different consumer laws or anything of that sort. They just was like, pay me this money and we're going to do this. Well, pay this money to enroll. And I believe they had like a paper delete type of thing. So I decided to do credit repair differently. I probably overshare with my clients. I probably whelm them with things, but I want them to know everything that I know so that they can make sure that they don't get back into the same predicament that they're in when they come to me, right? So I make sure that they know about what makes up their credit score. I make sure that they know that in addition to me getting negative items removed, that they also need to now establish new credit. So I have a list of credit building accounts that I refer them to, and I walk them through the entire process. I also have an ebook that I typically tell new clients, potential clients, right? I tell them, hey, here's an ebook. If you want to work on your credit yourself, you can. And here's the steps on how to do that. So I'll share the link with my Stan store where you can actually purchase my ebook. You'll also have a link on how you can reach me. You will, what else am I going to share? So my number is 702-969-3605. That is my business number. That is how you can reach me, or you can go to Royal Legacy Services, so svcs.com, and you can go ahead and schedule a consultation with me, and I will look at everything that you have going on, whether it's your taxes. I do back taxes. I try to stay away from amendments. If I didn't file your taxes, I typically don't like redoing somebody else's stuff, but I can look at it and look it over and see if it's something that I can help you with. The tax advice, I typically, if you have a business, I love people who have small businesses because there is so much that you are able to claim as a deduction under your business. So those are all the things that I will walk you through and talk you through when you have a consultation with me. So Nicole Johnson or Nicole Royal with Royal Legacy Services. Homeownership versus renting and the pros and cons from my own personal experience. Excuse me. If you are a renter, most places don't require this, but there are some places who do require where you get renter's insurance to protect the unit, but also to protect your personal property. So if they are not requiring it, make sure you get renter's insurance. If you are thinking about owning a home or you already have one, I highly recommend that you, in addition to homeowner's insurance, which you got to have anyway, get home warranty. Home warranty covers your appliances, your electrical, and your plumbing on the inside of the house, where you would only have to pay a deductible. You still got to come out of pocket, whatever your deductible is. Typically, it's around $100 for the deductible, but they will take care of repairing whatever it is. Okay. So if you have those things, it's an extra cost that you have to pay a month, but it's good to have when things happen. Okay. So I hope this was informative to you. I hope if you are a renter or you're a homeowner that, these tips were good for you. If not, if not, if they were, go ahead and make sure that you like and you subscribe and you share this with somebody else who is not yet a renter or a homeowner and they're trying to decide which one they want to do. I feel like the pros and the cons on both sides are good depending on where you're at in your life. Some people like to just rent for the rest of their life, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. They don't want the responsibility of having to come out of pocket and fix things. Then you have the comfort of being able to not worry about property taxes and all that stuff. And then you have those people who like to be homeowners and they want to have that investment. Whatever your path is, choose it for you, not for what everybody else is telling you to do. Thank you guys so much for pulling up a seat to the table today. Make sure that you guys turn on the notification so that you can be able to be notified on new episodes that are coming out. And I hope you guys all have a blessed one.